sprain in that game and has been out since. And that puts a lot on the plate of players like Spencer Dinwiddie, who just came in, who finds Marshall for the corner three.
Well, you see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. He's a guy who's high usage rate, the ball's in his hands. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in action, and everyone's stepping up.
Listen to that voice. That's not analysis. That's disdain. Stephanie White is describing a Mavericks team without Luka Doncic, and she sounds relieved. The ball's moving, multiple players getting involved, lower usage rates. She's practically celebrating the absence of a superstar. Now here's why that matters. 24 hours before this clip surfaced, Caitlin Clark sat down for an NBA on NBC analyst appearance. They asked her which current player's game she'd most like to add to her own skill set. Her answer? Luka Doncic, the exact player Stephanie White just described with barely concealed contempt.
Even more specifically, because there's things in his game maybe you would want to add to yours in the league?
Man, I think Luka. I mean, Luka's amazing and he's incredible. I think the way he can not only score the ball, but also the way he passes. And I think the thing about him is, like, he's not the fastest, he's not the most athletic, but he can get his defender to move where he wants him to go, and he takes up that space, and he does a really good job of either keeping the defender behind him or keeping him to the side. So I think that's something I can certainly learn from. Like, I always kind of want to run away from the defense rather than absorbing the contact and taking up the space that they give me. So I think, obviously, he's pretty incredible. He averages like a 30-point triple-double, so he makes it look pretty easy, but I can promise you it's not that easy.
Yeah, he is coming off.
Watch Caitlin's face when she talks about Luka. She lights up. She's specific about what she admires. The way he manipulates defenders, how he creates space despite not being the fastest or most athletic, his ability to keep defenders on his hip or behind him. She's not giving a generic answer for the cameras. She's genuinely studying his game, trying to incorporate elements into her own approach. And think about what she's describing. High usage, dominant ball handling, a player who controls the pace and makes everyone around him better through his individual brilliance. That's Caitlin's game. That's what made her the most exciting player in women's basketball. That's what sold out arenas and generated 3.2 million viewers for a WNBA playoff game.
Sustained a wrist sprain in that game and has been out since. And that puts a lot on the plate of players like Spencer Dinwiddie, who just came in, who finds Marshall for the corner three.
Well, you see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. He's a guy who's high usage rate, the ball's in his hands. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in action, and everyone's stepping up.
Lower usage rate for him this year. A wrist sprain in that game and has been out.
Now, go back to Stephanie White's commentary. She's analyzing a January 2019 game right after Dallas traded Luka to Atlanta. Wait, that's backwards. Atlanta drafted Luka 3rd overall and immediately traded him to Dallas for Trae Young and a future first-round pick. This clip is from when Luka was injured, not traded. The Mavericks were playing without him due to a wrist strain, and Stephanie White is breaking down how much better the offense looks. Multiple players touching the ball, lower usage rates across the board. Everyone getting involved in the act. She describes it like she's watching beautiful basketball finally freed from the constraints of a ball-dominant superstar. That's a coaching philosophy, and it's the exact opposite of what Caitlin Clark represents.
And she was asked about, hey, what's the player that you like? What play style can you relate to? That sort of thing. And she dropped a big fat Luka Doncic on us. Now, I've said Steph Curry mixed with Larry Bird, but okay, I can get where she's coming from. She's being asked about, a more present-day kind of player. Of course, Steph is still active, but Luka is, of course, has that triple-double vibe to him.
The original commentator nailed it. If you've been watching content creators who actually analyze this stuff instead of mainstream sports media blowing smoke, we've been saying this for months. Stephanie White would prefer to coach basketball games without Caitlin Clark, or at minimum, with Caitlin in a significantly diminished role, not as the focal point, not as the superstar, as a piece in a system. And before anyone jumps in with the standard defenses, let's be clear about something. This isn't speculation. This isn't reading tea leaves. We're watching Stephanie White describe her ideal offensive system, and it's fundamentally incompatible with maximizing a generational talent like Caitlin Clark.
He had one just the other night. And, boy, it got, my boy Ben Daniel brought this up, and I was like, that's right. I think I did a video on that when it happened. And it was Stephanie White's take on Luka Doncic being gone from the Mavericks. I mean, a trade that has been overwhelmingly destroyed. It's considered one of the worst trades in the history of all sports, outside of Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Let's just get to this. Once again, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're still subscribed to the channel.
Think about how NFL coaching hires work. Every January, 10 coaches get fired. New coaches come in for interviews. And you know what happens in those interview rooms? They blow smoke up ownership's ass. About the quarterback. Oh yeah, I can work with him. I see his potential. We can build around him, whatever the owner wants to hear. Then they get the job. Season starts. Quarterback struggles. And suddenly, that coach who promised to build around the existing QB is leaking to reporters about drafting a new one. Or they're running a system that doesn't fit the quarterback's strengths because they never believed in him. They just said what they needed to say to get hired. Is that what happened with Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever? Did she walk into that interview and tell ownership exactly what they wanted to hear about Caitlin Clark? Because it's the most coveted coaching job in women's basketball. It's the highest profile position in the WNBA. Of course she wanted it. Question is, did she want it for the right reasons?
And it goes back to something we've been saying for a while. If you watch us content creators and not a bunch of sports media that's blowing smoke up your ass about Stephanie White, we've said Stephanie White would prefer to play basketball games, in our opinion, either without Caitlin Clark or with Caitlin Clark in a more diminished kind of non-superstar kind of role. Well, that's not what any of us want to see. I mean, can we not sign up for that?
Here's what we know about the WNBA. The league is filled with people who resent Caitlin Clark's success. Not all of them, but enough that it's impossible to ignore. Players who've been in the league for years watching this rookie generate more attention in 3 months than they've received in their entire careers. Media members who covered the league in obscurity suddenly dealing with millions of new fans who don't care about their preferred narratives. Executives who built their reputations on slow, incremental growth, now facing questions about why they didn't capitalize on star power earlier. Stephanie White exists in that ecosystem. She's been part of WNBA culture for decades as a player, assistant coach, and head coach. The idea that she's somehow immune to those same resentments requires us to ignore everything her own words tell us.
Or a better team when Caitlin Clark is, lack of a better way of putting it, hitting threes, hitting shots, and distributing the ball in a dynamic manner. She's a dynamic basketball player. But if you gave the Indiana Fever head coach truth serum, would she truly feel that the same? There's been small things.
Listen to how the original commentator describes those red flags. They're so red, they're maroon. That's not hyperbole when you actually examine the evidence. Caitlin Clark explicitly identifies with a high-usage, ball-dominant superstar whose game revolves around controlling pace and making everyone better through individual brilliance. Stephanie White explicitly praises an offense that functions without that type of player, where the ball moves freely and usage is distributed evenly. Those aren't compatible philosophies. They can't both be right about how to maximize the Indiana Fever's potential. Either Caitlin needs to be unleashed as the focal point, or the system needs balanced contributions from multiple players. You can't have both simultaneously.
Filled with females that are ate up with the fact that Caitlin Clark is not really her. So you want to just sell me on the fact that Stephanie White's not one of them? Well, her agenda has told us she's absolutely one of them. I found this interesting. When Ben Daniel did a video about it, I said, oh, shit. That's right. I was watching that last night. I'm going to talk about that too. Because it just kind of shows you when there's trouble coming down the road, you start seeing signs. You start seeing key indicators. This is a blatant, you can audibly hear and see from Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White, they got a difference of philosophy. That's an issue. Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out.
So let's talk about what this means for the Fever's future. Because this isn't just an interesting philosophical disagreement. This is a fundamental divide that will shape every decision Stephanie White makes as head coach. Does Caitlin Clark get the green light to dominate the ball and create, or does the offense run through structured sets with distributed touches? When the Fever need a bucket in crunch time, is Caitlin taking that shot, or are they running a play designed to get an open look for whoever the defense gives them? When they're building the roster, are they targeting players who complement a superstar's game, or are they looking for versatile pieces who fit a balanced system? Every single one of those decisions traces back to this core philosophical question. And right now, the evidence suggests the coach and the franchise player have very different answers. Think about Caitlin's rookie season under Christy Sides. Whatever you want to say about Sides as a coach, and there's plenty to criticize, she let Caitlin cook. High usage rate, freedom to create. The offense ran through her, especially down the stretch of games. And the results spoke for themselves. The Fever made the playoffs for the first time since they generated unprecedented attention and revenue. Caitlin finished second in MVP voting as a rookie. Now Stephanie White comes in with a completely different vision. And we're supposed to believe that's going to work out smoothly, that there won't be tension when Caitlin wants to play like Luka and Stephanie wants an offense that looks like the Luka-less Mavericks. Here's what makes this particularly concerning. Caitlin Clark is under contract. She can't leave. She doesn't have leverage. If Stephanie White decides to implement her preferred system, Caitlin has to play in it or sit out. And we've seen what happens in professional sports when a generational talent gets stuck with a coach who doesn't believe in them. The talent gets wasted. Years of prime performance get sacrificed to a philosophical disagreement that never should have happened in the first place. The Indiana Fever had one job when hiring a new head coach. Find someone who understands what they have in Caitlin Clark and knows how to maximize it. Instead, they might have hired someone who fundamentally disagrees with the entire premise of building around a superstar. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Stephanie White has evolved since that 2019 commentary. Maybe she's watched Caitlin's game and recognized that you don't constrain generational talent, you unleash. Maybe she's going to build an offense that lets Caitlin be exactly who she is while still getting others involved. But that Luka commentary tells a different story. That's not a throwaway line. That's a coach revealing what she values in basketball. Ball movement over individual creation. Distributed usage over superstar dominance. System over talent. The WNBA just had its most successful season in history. Because of Caitlin Clark, ratings exploded. Attendance shattered records. Merchandise sales went through the roof. All of it driven by one player who plays exactly like Luka Doncic. High usage, ball dominant, making everyone around her better through individual brilliance. And the Indiana Fever's response was to hire a coach who doesn't like that style of basketball. You can't make this up. The league finally gets the superstar it's been desperately needing for decades. And the instinct is still to try to fit her into a system instead of building the system around her. It's the same backwards thinking that's held the WNBA back for years. The same resistance to star power. The same preference for collective mediocrity over individual excellence. Caitlin Clark deserves better. The fans who showed up in record numbers deserve better. And if Stephanie White can't or won't adjust her philosophy to maximize the most talented player in the league, then the Fever need to make a decision about who matters more, the coach or the franchise. Because right now, those red flags aren't just red, they're maroon, and they're waving in the wind for anyone willing to look at them honestly. The question is whether the Indiana Fever will see them before it's too late, or whether we're about to watch a generational talent get wasted because a coach values her system more than her superstar. So here's my question for you. If you're the Fever's owner, and you see this philosophical divide, who are you siding with? The coach, who wants ball movement and distributed usage, or the player who just generated more revenue for your franchise in one season than the previous 5 years combined? Because you can't have both. Pick a side and tell me in the comments.